evening, everyone. My name is Gina Boscarino, and I am the Project Success Coordinator at Mill Creek. I'm so excited to have all of you with us tonight. And we had a lot of people as well who signed up that were interested in attending the program, but were not able to. So hopefully you are getting a chance to watch this recording. Tonight, we're going to be talking about teens, tweens, and social media, kind of a big topic right now, teaching our kids to be smart, safe, and kind online. So I'm going to start out by talking a little bit about myself. I like to refer to myself as a media kid because media was a big thing in my household growing up. My dad works in radio, my mom works in advertising. So we talked a lot about media and commercials, and we watched, there was TV going and all of that kind of stuff going on. Obviously, social media is a new thing, but it's something that I find really interesting. My job, I'm a group specialist at Wedgwood Christian Services. If you're interested in any of our programs or in any of our other parent educational videos, you can check out our YouTube channel. There's a link right there below that. A couple of the things that I do for Wedgwood, one of the things I do is I run a group called Teen Charge, and you can find out more at teencharge.org. Teen Charge is a leadership group for teens who love to create media. So I meet with these kids once a month, twice a month virtually, and they come up with topics that they care about, that they think are important to other teens. And then they write and create their own blogs or short videos, or sometimes even art or music pieces about the topic, and we share them on social media for other kids to see. So it's a really neat opportunity. If you know any kids that are interested in that kind of a thing, feel free to reach out. We're always looking for new members. The other position that I have is that I am the Project Success Coordinator at Mill Creek. So this is Project Success is a prevention program, and this is going to be my second year at Mill Creek. But prior to that, I was at the high school for 8 years. I really enjoy being in Comstock Park. I really enjoy what I do. So my interest in this specific topic, apart from just growing up in media, started in 2012. I started doing focus groups with kids, several different schools in the area about social media. I was kind of interested in just finding out what kids had heard about social media in terms of what their parents had talked to them about, what kind of boundaries or limits parents were setting for kids for social media. And I was really fascinated by some of the stuff that I found. So since then, it's just become a really a passionate topic for me. Each year I facilitate several parent professional workshops about digital citizenship, media literacy, and internet safety, and then also kind of how those things tie in with topics like mental health, sex trafficking, drugs and alcohol, and self-esteem. So kind of a heavy topic, but I'm really excited to be able to be sharing this with you tonight. It's even cooler to be talking to the parents of students that I get to see every day, because I talk to your kids about social media. So it's fun for me to be able to share some of this stuff. So before we get started, just a couple of questions, and nobody has to answer this, but I want you to just think about a few of these things. When you were growing up, how did you find out about the music your friends were listening to? How did you make friends outside of school? How did you meet potential girlfriends or boyfriends? And how did you express interest in girlfriends or boyfriends? Where did you see bullying occur? And lastly, how did you know if you'd been left out? Like if you hadn't been invited to a party or to a sleepover? I'm guessing that there was a wide variety of answers to those questions, probably everywhere from, hanging out at the mall to, bullying happened in the parking lot at school, or I didn't know I'd been left out until Monday morning when everybody was talking about a party or sleepover I hadn't been at, all sorts of different places. Well, for the modern kids, they have the cell phone, and that's basically their locker, their school cafeteria, their yearbook, their mall, the parking lot. The phone is where everything happens, specifically on social media. So they're definitely living in a different world than we are. And of course, most of us probably use social media as well, but I think some of the challenges that the kids are facing are really unique to them, not to their stage in development where they're at in life, but also just because they've grown up with this, and the way that they communicate and the way that they solve disagreements or start disagreements with others is maybe a lot different than how we might do things. So I want to talk about really how this technology has impacted kids today. So first question, how is social media use impacting our kids? Obviously, we've seen a huge uptick in social media use, specifically since the pandemic, because everybody was stuck at home. We needed things to do. And in that case, it was a great thing for a lot of people to be able to stay connected. But our numbers that we've seen of young people using social media have just skyrocketed. So before we get into the negative, I want to talk a little bit about the positive stuff. I actually gave a program on this last week, and one of my students said to me, why do you only talk about the negative stuff? You don't ever talk about the positive stuff. So I wanted to make sure that I included this because there are a lot of positives. And a lot of these answers actually came from a survey that I did in the fall with my Teen Charge group. It was an internet survey. We surveyed teens from all around Kent County. We had a lot of students participate from Mill Creek Middle School. So some of your students may have even participated in this. And we were just asking kids about how social media has had an impact on their life. So some of the positives that we kept seeing repeated over and over again. Kids say that it gives them a way to make connections with kids outside of their social circle or even meet new people. It provides a space for teens to be creative and make their own videos, digital art, etc. Obviously, we've all kind of had it with TikTok at this point, but there is something to be said. I mean, kids are learning about editing videos on a timeline through this, and it's given them an opportunity to be creative. And I've seen some kids make some really neat stuff. I've also seen some really pointless dancing, but it makes them happy. Another positive would be a place to find information or support if needed. I was really pleasantly surprised by how many kids talked about finding information through the internet, through social media. Not that it's always accurate, but it was kind of heartening to me to think that, okay, kids are using this for more than just a tool to gossip and cause drama. And there's lots of other positives, I'm sure, as well. I just kind of wanted to touch on some of the ones that the kids specifically mentioned. These are some teen comments that were from our survey. On social media, I've learned a lot about mental health and even how to improve it. And that was something that several kids said because we asked some very specific questions about mental health, and a lot of students said that they had gotten information about mental health, or even for them, they felt like they had a mental health condition that had been more normalized when they found out that other people were struggling with that as well through social media. It lets me socialize with friends and family. I had a couple students talk about having family out of the country and that it's really the best way for them to connect. And somebody said, I like to look at pictures of animals and informational posts, which is great. I'm glad. Use it for the fun stuff. That's awesome. Now we'll get into the negatives. So here are some potential negatives of social media use. First of all, there's exposure to inappropriate content. We're not going to talk a ton about that, but there's a couple of things that I want to bring to your attention. Unfortunately, it opens up a connection for predators and traffickers. Even with blocks on your social media pages, it's still not that difficult for strange people to get in touch with you or to get in touch with kids. So that's really something to be aware of. And I know a lot of people kind of think of like, oh, internet predator is kind of like a boogeyman or just kind of like a, that it's just something you see in movies or something you see on the news. But I would say the bigger concern would be traffickers, honestly. And in West Michigan, we have a truly sad and large trafficking problem. So I think it's something that parents really need to be aware of. Another negative is that it can be addicting. A lot of the kids that we heard from mentioned that aspect. It can be harmful to their mental health and self-esteem. And there's always going to be that potential for cyberbullying and online drama. So here are some of the comments that our teens made about this. There are so many things I see that make me insecure. It can make you feel bad about yourself. It can make you feel left out. We had a lot of comments, specifically from young ladies, about how social media causes them to feel bad about their appearance, causes them to feel bad about their bodies, causes them to feel bad about pretty much you name it, anything appearance-wise. And so that's sad. It's sad to see, and it's sad to think that these girls that are getting younger and younger as they're using social media are feeling worse about themselves. All right, we're going to start with exposure to inappropriate content, just because this is kind of a quick section. It's probably no surprise if you're on social media that it's not hard to find nudity and other sexually explicit materials. Pornographers are pretty aggressive with their marketing as well. Statistically, we know that a large number of kids see pornography before the age of 13 without even meaning to. You click on the wrong link, that sort of a thing. And even with those tight controls on there, even if you've got the parent controls, it's still something that you have to look out for. I saw this in another presentation one time, and I thought it was really interesting. They just talked about how if you have the Instagram app, you can find porn in 6 clicks. All you got to do is magnifying glass, search, and then type in the letters hot. That's 3 letters, HOT, so that's 3. And then 6, you just click on the profile and you can see all sorts of porn and explicit content. Another one for this would definitely be Snapchat or TikTok. I know that there are supposed to be guidelines against these sorts of things, but somehow they happen. Another section of inappropriate content that kids are going to see a lot of online is alcohol and drug use. Sites like Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, there's lots of drug-related content, from people blowing smoke rings to demonstrating how to make dabs, or how to use a particular drug, or even just kind of showing off their collections, their paraphernalia. And then, of course, we have the celebrities. We have on this page, I have a picture of Miley Cyrus and Rihanna. Both are smoking weed. I think Rihanna is drinking as well. It's kind of a blurry picture. But a lot of celebrity accounts will glorify drug use. So why is that a big deal? Oh, sorry, I jumped ahead of myself. First, another thing I want to mention is that anyone can buy drugs through Instagram or through a lot of these social media pages. Again, it's supposed to be blocked, but dealers get around that by using multiple accounts created by bots so that they can escape detection and just continue selling via social media. So they might have like 30 different accounts that they're selling these things from. They use different variations on the spelling so that it stays under the radar. And then the drugs can be purchased and shipped directly to your home. So again, going back to the analogy of when you were a kid, if you wanted to get drugs, you had to work to get them, right? I mean, here, you can go online and figure it out, have them shipped directly to your house, that kind of a thing. And then this quote down here, I think, is really interesting. And it's especially interesting when we get to the next slide. I'll kind of draw your attention back to it. But it says, just as drug use rewires the brain to crave more of the substance, social media platforms have designed their sites in such a way that after a single search for an illicit drug, the algorithm gets rewired to advertise drugs to the already vulnerable user. So that means that if your child has been looking at that kind of stuff, it's going to be more likely to come up, which we all know how internet algorithms work. But psychologically, there's a big reason that this is concerning, and that's what we want to talk about here. So what's the big deal? Kids know that people use drugs. Kids know that, pornography exists. What's going to be the big deal if they see that stuff? The problem is because of social norming theory. And this is a theory that our behavior is influenced by what we perceive to be the norm or the standard for our peers. So kind of reading a little bit more into that, it posits that our behavior is influenced by misperceptions of how our peers think and act. Overestimations of problem behavior in our peers will cause us to increase our own problem behaviors. So one thing that I hear when I talk to kids a lot, I work with students who have gotten in trouble at school sometimes with substance use. More often than not, it's vaping. And they tell me, everybody vapes, everybody vapes. And then when we kind of talk about it a little bit more, I'm like, well, where are you getting this information? Do all of your friends vape? Well, no, they don't all vape. well, does every kid in your class vape? No, not every kid in my class vapes. Why do you think every kid in your, everybody vapes? Well, it's all over TikTok. Okay, all right. And kind of going back to that last quote that we saw. So if somebody sees it one time, they do a search for it, that's all they're going to see from then on out. They're just getting, their feed is getting flooded with, videos of people vaping and doing cool tricks with vaping. It really starts to feel like, you know what, everybody is vaping. So even if these things are not typical behaviors, it starts to feel that they are. It starts to feel like everybody's doing it, which makes people more likely to do something. All right, the next thing, predators and traffickers. Predators and traffickers online work the same way that they would in real life, by grooming a child. So they contact a user online, establish a relationship with the intent of becoming sexually involved with or sexually exploiting the youth. Predators and traffickers have been known to use social media and even gaming sites as a way to connect with kids. One site that I know, and this was years ago, so they may have fixed some of it, but I know that Roblox had an issue a couple of years ago with predators trying to connect with kids. I feel like pretty much any gaming site where you can communicate with somebody, there's been an issue. I've even heard about, it was like a Fitbit app or something where an adult man connected with a young girl that showed up like, another Fitbit users in your area. So any app basically where there are chat capabilities, specifically if it's connects you with someone in your area, are things that we need to look out for. The internet is the #1 way that predators and traffickers connect with kids. This has completely replaced that idea of, kind of these shady characters hanging out at the mall, kind of waiting to prey on vulnerable looking kids. Now they go straight to the internet. It's quicker, it's faster. They can be grooming multiple kids at once because they can have 18 conversations at once. And I guess it's just easier. So a couple of things that I think parents need to know is that predators target youth based on what they see on their profile. So they're going to be looking for somebody who maybe talks about substance use, somebody who might be threatening to run away. Maybe it looks like they have an unstable home life, because that shows the predator that this is a student or a person that is vulnerable. Maybe they don't have a lot of support. Another thing they might look for is somebody talking about, I feel so lonely, I'm unhappy, my parents don't treat me right, which, let's be honest, probably 90% of middle school kids could post something like that on social media, whether or not it is actually factual. And then this is when this person kind of comes in, they might send a message into their direct message box and say like, hey, why are you so sad? Like, you're too beautiful to be sad. Or, wow, it really sounds like they don't appreciate you, and so kind of building this relationship. Usually it turns into a romantic relationship. We call that like the Romeo method, specifically with traffickers. The person might end up buying the student gifts or money, and this is generally over a long period of time. This is not typically something that occurs in a weekend. They want to build up that trust. They request photos, and those can later be used for blackmail. And then this is something to be aware of as well, sextortion. This is an internet crime in which predators threaten to show or tell parents or others about explicit pictures if the child doesn't do what they want. So let's say that they got some naked pictures of a child previously. Maybe the kid says, I don't feel comfortable, I don't want to do that again. And they say, well, if you don't, I'm going to send this to your mom, your dad, your pastor, your grandpa. I'm going to post it everywhere so everybody can see it, making the child feel like, okay, I don't have an option. I have to do more of these pictures. And sometimes that escalates into, I need you to make a video, or I need you to meet up with my friend. This is a scary topic to think about. And I think one of the best defenses that parents have against this kind of these traffickers and predators is to talk about this stuff with their kids. They should know that anybody that is trying to get too close to them too fast, that should be a red flag. An adult expressing interest in a child, some of them would pretend to be kids, but a lot of times, we see it's like the 13-year-old girl, and there's a man and a 27-year-old man who says, oh, you're so mature, that kind of a thing. So just letting kids know that like, that's not typical, that's not appropriate. If somebody ever asks you for pictures like this, like, here's what we need to do, you need to tell me immediately, sign offline. So just making sure that your kids are aware, and also knowing who your kids are communicating with online. And I know that's easier said than done, but it does help to use those blockers online. It helps to make sure your kids have their privacy settings on the highest setting, to make sure they're only communicating or accepting friend requests from people that they know. All right, technology addiction. So 46% of teens say they're addicted to their phones, and 60% say that it negatively affects other parts of their lives like diet, sleep, exercise, and schoolwork. And then on the right, you're going to see a statistic from our study that we did in November. This was the survey I was telling you about with the students. How often do you check your social media? 5% said once a week or less. 19% said once a day, which is actually, I'm impressed. 40% is multiple times a day, and 36% is constantly throughout the day. If I'm being honest, I'm probably in that 36%. So some of these kids have a healthier relationship with social media than I do. 3 out of 4 Kent County teens indicated that they wished they could spend less time online. And just one teen comment I wanted to share just said, I'm always online and it isn't good for me. And we had a couple of other comments like that, kids talking about like, I'm online when I should be sleeping or when I should be doing homework. They know they shouldn't be doing this, or they realize, or they feel that they're getting addicted. But like so many of us, how do you handle that? How do you manage this technology addiction? Another concern would be bullying and drama. If you're a parent of a middle school student and they have social media, I'm sure you have run into drama at some point. 59% of teens have experienced some form of cyberbullying. And now when we talk about cyberbullying, usually we think about it in the extreme, but in this case, in this survey, they included physical threats, kids who had like an explicit image of them shared without their permission, people spreading false rumors, or just constant harassment, like people just continuing to message you. I have lunch with 8th grade and 6th grade girls a couple times a week. And one of the things that I find happens on a weekly basis is that there's always some type of drama in the group chat. Somebody says something and then everybody gangs up on somebody else, and maybe somebody gets kicked out of the group chat. There's just so many opportunities for drama online. And here are some teen comments. And the first one, it really strikes me. It says, people are ruthless over the internet and don't care about what they say because there's almost never any consequences and it isn't face-to-face. And unfortunately, that's true. I mean, anybody that has ever been on the internet can tell you that, there's kind of this disconnect. You don't feel like you're talking to a real person. Another comment was, social media is a way to hurt someone's feelings. Social media can be toxic. And people hide behind the screen and try to make you feel bad about yourself. All right, mental health. A growing body of research suggests that mental health can be harmful for that social media can be harmful for teen mental health. Heavy social media use is associated with lower levels of well-being for boys and girls ages 14 to 17. And girls also experience lower self-esteem and higher psychological distress. The more time spent on social media, the more likely a person will experience feelings of anxiety, isolation, and hopelessness. And high levels of social media use over 4 years was associated with increased depression among middle and high school youth. And these are from some 2021 studies. So this is kind of an interesting juxtaposition when you compare it with what we got with our local results. So I wanted to make sure to put that in. So our Kent County teens actually had a little bit more of a balanced view. They reported seeing both the positive and negative effects on mental health. So we had 11.9% said that social media had a positive effect on mental health. 8.6% said it was a negative effect on their social health or on their mental health, and 79.5% said that it was both. And then I wanted to read you a couple of these comments because I think they kind of speak a little bit about that. First one, I think social media can have both negative and positive effects on teens because social media can make people feel sad and depressed, but it can also make them feel happy and entertained. Sometimes social media can boost my self-esteem and make me relax, but sometimes it just makes me compare myself and my lifestyle to others, not helping my self-esteem. Social media in this case, can influence bad behavior and people telling people to cut themselves or kill themselves. That one is pretty straightforward bad. Social media makes people hate themselves. They think that there's always going to be someone better than them and they're not good enough. And again, that comparison and feeling like you don't measure up, like you're not good enough, that was something that we heard from a large number of students that participated in the survey. We asked the teens some questions about emotional distress, I guess you could say. How often have you experienced each of the following while using social media? Stressed over the number of likes on a photo or video. This one I was really pleased to see that blue is the biggest majority, and the majority of kids said never. Orange is sometimes, gray is often, and yellow is all the time. The second one was felt lonely, ignored, or depressed. This one is a little bit more spread out. We still have a chunk that says never, but then we are rapidly approaching with that orange, sometimes, often, and all the time. Felt bad about your body or appearance. Again, never is still in the majority, which is great, but we're really seeing more of the often and the sometimes, and even the all of the time are kind of catching up there. And then the last one, compared yourself to someone else. We still have a large number of nevers, but again, we're seeing more sometimes, oftens, and all of the time. So basically, here's the bottom line. The best way to keep our kids safe and to help them make good decisions is to empower them with knowledge and to protect them with appropriate boundaries, which is just what every kid wants to talk about when you're talking about social media. But we've got a couple tips for you to help you do that. So, number one, talk about it. This is definitely something important that you should be discussing with your kids. First of all, it's good to be open with your kids about their online activities. If that's not something that you have done previously, that might be kind of difficult, but it's necessary, I think. And kids might feel kind of like, well, why are you bothering me? Why do you need to know all of a sudden? But it's important for you to know that stuff. And I think you can let them know that you're coming from a place of love. If you're setting, boundaries for the first time, explain why they're needed. Older kids who've not had these restrictions before are going to automatically jump to that. Why don't you trust me? What did I do wrong? Why am I being punished? So again, remind them it's coming from a place of love. They don't recognize some of these issues that we do. Some of the things that we just talked about, they may not recognize the seriousness of it. I know so many students that constantly not only accept friend requests from, but get into romantic relationships with people that they never meet or do end up meeting online, despite how much I yell at them about it. And I think they just simply don't understand the dangers. So it's important to explain this stuff and go over it. And here's a reminder, your child does not need unrestricted access to the entire internet. No matter how mature they are, they're still a child. You have permission to say no. Kids have undeveloped brain. The part of the brain that's responsible for logical decision-making and reasoning won't develop for many years, which is one of the reasons why it's so scary to give kids the internet and allow them to post things that could follow them all the way through to the end of their lives, that could affect getting into colleges or getting good jobs someday. Kids don't quite have that ability to think things through. So sometimes we need to protect them from themselves. And it's okay to restrict their access to certain sites or make them wait to get a social media account. There's a reason age restrictions exist. If you look at the top there, that's a little chart that I found online that shows you kind of the breakdown of the age when you're supposed to be allowed to get these social media accounts. Some of them, in my opinion, are a little bit young. Most of the ones I think that we would all recognize would be in the 13 and up. So like Snapchat, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, Twitch, But again, you don't have to allow your child to get that just because they're at the right age. I hear a lot of kids complain about that. Well, my mom won't let me get it and I'm 13, so I should be able to get it. No, your mom gets to make that decision, and that's tough, but we got to do what we got to do to protect our kids. If you don't feel like it's right for your child to have that, or you have some concerns, hold off for another couple months. All right, here's some suggestions for setting limits, because I know sometimes people are like, I would like to set limits, but I'm not entirely sure what sort of limits I should be setting. So one of them would be to agree on a time limit for device use that's not related to school. So you could say something like, you get 3 hours, maybe that's kind of a lot, 2 hours of time on your phone or your tablet or whatever when you're not using it for school each day. And when that time is done, you're done using it. You can even, if you've got older kids that are not so jazzed about having some restrictions put on them, you can work together to put this, to kind of put that into place and say like, hey, what do you think would be a reasonable amount of time for you to use social media or to use your phone or to use your tablet? They might give you a ridiculous number, but at least they're giving you some input and you can say, well, that's really not going to be realistic. Let's try to find something a little bit better, something that works for both of us. If you need to, you can use timers. A lot of people use those apps where they connect their child's phones to their phones, and they can have apps turn off after a certain amount of time, or kids can't access the internet after a certain hour, that kind of a thing. Sometimes that might be necessary if it seems like kids are having a hard time sticking to things. Another really good one is to establish phone-free zones. So one parent that I talked to one time said, our phone-free zones, we don't do phones in the bedroom, we don't do phones in the bathroom, because they were worried about kids sending explicit photos, or just the fact that they're in a small space with the door shut, like they don't know what they're looking at. It's a private area. If they just said, if you want to use your phone at home, you can use it in the kitchen table, you can use it at the living room, like use it when you're around people. You don't need to be in a private space to use it. You can also have some phone-free times. So maybe just say like, there's no phones when we're eating dinner as a family, or if you're doing an activity as a family. Or you could even say no dinner, no phones or no video games or whatever their device of choice is before your homework gets done. Another good one would be to keep phones and other devices in public spaces at night. Nothing good is going to happen if the kid's just scrolling through the internet when they're supposed to be in bed, right? And we also know that it's not good. It doesn't help our sleep. There's that whole blue light thing with the screen that keeps us up and somehow affects our ability to sleep. I'm not entirely sure. I'm not an expert on that, but that's a thing that exists. You could even make this a fun family challenge. You could say like, all right, let's all put our phones on the kitchen island tonight, and let's see, who makes it the longest, something like that. Or maybe you want to do a challenge about how long you're using your phone. You can say like, okay, whoever uses their phone the least this week, like they get to pick a dinner for Friday or something like that. And then don't be afraid to allow kids greater freedom as they get older. Otherwise, you might be dealing with some anger and some more resentment. But as kids do get older, hopefully the idea is that they'll be able to better make decisions. All right, these are suggested guidelines by age. I would say in reference to this, your child the best. So this is just kind of a blanket chart, I guess I would say. You know what your child can handle, your child's level of maturity. These are some suggestions. If you want to see a copy of this, I can send it to you. But just a couple of things, notice starting at like ages 5 through 8, parents being there when kids are using social media, not allowing them to chat during gaming. Ages 9 to 12 is when they're getting more independent, still doing those with the no use zones, making sure that you're aware of what apps they are downloading or accounts they're creating. So maybe something where they need to get parent permission. And then 13 through 16 is that social media. That's really the age when kids should be allowed to use social media. It's not until age 13, since most of the apps, that is the age when you're supposed to be allowed to get them. You can choose to continue with those time restrictions and no device zones. I know some parents that have their kids' passwords. There's nothing wrong with that. Like, that's fine. You're the parent, they're the kid, you know, and kids don't like it and it stinks, but you got to do what you got to do. So if you feel that that's something that, you know, if you're paying for the phone, their choice is to have a phone and give you the password, or to not have a phone. I think that's a no-brainer. And then I also know some adults or some parents that do periodic phone or social media checks. I knew a student that said to me once that he's like, well, I would never do anything because my mom will occasionally, she'll just say like, I have to be able to hand over my phone and she'll look at it whenever she wants. So I never know when that's going to be. And I don't think she did it frequently. It sounded like she did it maybe like 3 times a year, but that kind of kept him in line, because he was like, no, I don't want anything on my phone or in my history that if my mom just like took my phone out of my hands, there'd be something for her to see. All right, so some other tips for setting boundaries. Hold kids accountable. Setting limits and follow through with consequences, just like anything else. Remind kids that using the internet is a privilege. A lot of the kids that I talk to these days seem to believe that using the internet is a fundamental right, and it's not. It's a privilege. If you can't use it appropriately, then you need to take some time off maybe, and then demonstrate that you can use it appropriately. If you need to take a device away, one recommendation I would make is that it's good to give kids an opportunity to earn it back, because that gives them a chance to take responsibility for their actions and gives them a sense of control. I have seen situations where, you know, the kid does something they're not supposed to, so mom takes away the phone for a week, and then during that week, kid sneaks the phone again, so then mom takes the phone to get away for 2 weeks. And then something else happens and phone's supposed to be gone for like a full month, 2 months. And I think at that point, kids are just kind of like, first, they're desperate for their technology. And also it just seems so hopeless to them. So I think that it can be great to say, yeah, you can have your phone back once you've done this, or once you've cleaned the entire house, or once you have, I don't know, taken care of your brothers and sisters for a week and demonstrated that you can be a responsible person. The ball is in your court, so use it. And again, if you need to, use timers or software that allows you to monitor devices from your phone and block specific apps or shut off the internet. The only one of these I'm super familiar with is Bark, but Pinwheel is another one, and there's Google Family Link, which was free the last time I checked, which was in like December. I don't know if that has changed. But if your family, if you're Android users, that'd be a great one to check out. Okay, number 4, encourage the offline life. Because kids are so wrapped up in everything online and their social lives are online, their favorite activities are online, it can feel like the internet world is the real world and that's all there is. So that if they aren't online, they get anxious, they feel like they're going to miss something. It's so important for kids to have that life offline. So encourage them to participate in outside activities like sports, drama, band, or volunteering. Give them an opportunity to make friends who are not online. For some kids, they get really used to just making friends with somebody online, and it's completely different from communicating face-to-face. This also gives kids an opportunity, again, to practice that face-to-face communication. They've done some studies about how teens actually interpret facial expressions differently than adults. And they think that it's because of social media and because teens are so used to communicating via text, via messenger, whereas adults, we've spent the majority of our lives talking face to face. And so we've had more practice kind of decoding those messages. So it's good to get time for face-to-face communication. Allow opportunities for them to interact with friends in person. I know it's not always fun to have kids around, or not even super convenient. Maybe your house is not a great place to invite the kids over. Maybe there's a bunch of little siblings or something like that. But but allow them to, go for a walk with their friends, take them to the park, take them out with the family when you guys go to the beach or something. Just give them opportunities so they feel like they can have their friends around and spend time together. I would say always prioritize, or help them to prioritize that real life interaction over online interaction with people they don't know. And then lastly, support them and help them build confidence in other areas of interest, whether that's writing, robotics, singing. And this is kind of twofold, because kids who have confidence are remarkably resilient. If they're online and drama gets started, they get their feelings hurt, having that self-esteem or being able to say like, hey, well, this person might not like me, but I have something else I do that makes me feel good about myself, or I have other friends that aren't online, can be really super encouraging. All right, this is the tough one. Model appropriate and healthy behavior. So we set the examples that we want kids to follow. So let them see you take breaks from your phone. Again, make that a family challenge you could do together. Show them how to walk away from digital drama. Again, maybe harder than expected. So example, wow, the comments section on this article is getting pretty heated. I'm going to take a break and do something else. Doesn't that just sound natural? Can't you just see yourself saying that next time somebody is arguing politics on Facebook? And it might feel really awkward, but you know what? You're really setting a good example for your kid, because they're seeing like, okay, that's an option. This is possible for them to do it. My parents just did it. Talk to kids about your media choices and habits. Talk about, if I see something that doesn't seem true, I put it through a fact checker site. Or maybe talk to them about like websites that you don't trust at all. Talk to them a little bit about media bias and how some media sites are politically biased and they may not be getting the most factual information. So it's good to communicate with kids about this stuff. All right, empathy. Empathy is a hard thing to teach, but empathy is the ability to understand and share the feelings of another person. And this is where we go back to that digital disconnect. So again, it's easy to forget that you're talking to a real person with feelings when it's through a screen. Encourage kids to place themselves in another person's shoes. Remind them that words have consequences. And empathy is upstanding, which means that if you see somebody else getting picked on online, don't be a bystander, be an upstander, either tell somebody or stand up for that person. I put the toothpaste on there because a lot of you may have heard this example before, but there's a story about a woman that bought a tube of toothpaste and she had her kids squeeze it out and then told them to put all the toothpaste back in the tube, and they said they couldn't. And then she talks about how that's kind of what it's like when you say something mean about somebody, because you put it out there and it's out there, and you can apologize, all that you want, but they'll still hear those words. Those words they don't go away. The same way you can't shove that toothpaste back in the tube. And I think that's a great analogy to use when we're talking about online, because things don't go away when we put them online. Here's something that I think is kind of helpful and cute. Before you text, type, or speak, think first. Think T, is it true? H, is it helpful? I, is it inspiring? N, is it necessary? K, is it kind? Something we can all remember. And here is the last one. Seeking out helpful resources online. All right, this website, I'm obsessed with this website, and I should really be sponsored by this website. I'm not getting paid by them. I should be, because I promote them so heavily every time I do a program. commonsensemedia.org is awesome. It is a wonderful website. You can find lots of educational videos, free curriculum, stuff on digital citizenship, so teaching your child how to be a decent, good, and respectable person online. You can find research, aids, guides, articles, and then one of my favorite things is the app reviews. You can find ratings for apps, websites, music, movies, I think even books. So basically you just type them in and then they'll tell you, okay, here is the age we recommend it for. Here are a couple of scenes or things that might be questionable, things you need to be aware of.
if it's an app, sometimes they'll tell you like, click here to find out how to do the parental controls or ways to make it safer for your child. So I can't promote this website enough. This website is absolutely amazing. And it's amazing how quickly they update. I feel like I'll hear new kids talking about like a new app at school, and I'll go on Common Sense Media and they already have it up. So Common Sense Media, if you're watching, please sponsor me. Thanks. All right, a couple of others. Internet Matters, that's a great one. Internetmatters.org. That one is especially good if you have younger kids. There's some interactive games and activities. There's age-specific advice for parents. So it'll say, you know, your child is 11 to 13, like here's some good guidelines for them, kind of like what we saw in that chart. Media Smarts has a digital citizenship guide for parents. So you can download that, it's PDF. And you can just find that online free. And then NetSafe, it's netsafe.org.nz. It's in New Zealand, it's a website from New Zealand. Has lots of downloadable resources, activities for kids, articles for kids and parents. And lastly, Internet Safety 101. This one is a really great website. Has downloadable internet checklists. There's safety contracts, so you can have a contract with your kid. Like, hey, here's the plan. Here's what you do if somebody ever asks you for this or says something that makes you uncomfortable. Here are the people that you talk to. Here are the things that are not okay. There's guides for parents, videos, resources, stuff about cyberbullying, cybersecurity, pornography, news, media updates, links to report cyber crimes, mostly which are related to internet predators and traffickers. So wonderful website. And that brings us to the end of our presentation. So if you have questions, I would love to talk to you about this. You can email me at gboscarino@wedgwood.org, or you can email me at my Comstock Park email address, which is just cppschools.org.com. Thank you guys so much for joining me and for sticking with me tonight. And I really appreciate you being here, and I hope to see you again sometime soon. Have a good night.